Hello and welcome. Today I want to talk about a topic that I've been asked a lot about over the years, which is how can I map faster? Now, the first thing that always comes to mind when someone asks me how can I go as fast as possible is put on a headhunter and put on a badge of brotherhood. The reason for this is if we are talking about objective character speed, those things do make you faster than anything else in the game. However, as I thought about it more, I realized that isn't necessarily what everyone is looking for. They don't need objectively the fastest thing. They need faster than what they're doing currently. So, how can you increase your mapping speed to be faster than what you are currently? And I think the key to that comes in how you play and your loot filter. To start with, how you play. Don't spend a bunch of time reading Reddit. Don't spend a bunch of time replying to Twitch chats while you are trying to map efficiently. When you are mapping efficiently, roll a bunch of maps, get it ready, and then just go. Slam map after map after map. Toss all your items in a dump tab from each map. Don't sort through them too much. You can deal with all that later. This alone will help you map a significant amount faster. But changing your loot filter can make a huge difference. Probably more than you're anticipating. So for this test, I have downloaded clean versions of NeverSync Strict, which I know is a filter that a lot of people use, and NeverSync Uber Strict, which I know is also a lot of people's main filter, especially if you're MFing, clearing juiced content, etc. And I'm going to do two tests here. The first one is I'm going to run some very basic maps, Tier 16 Toxic Sewer. I'm going to alch it, and I'm going to go. There's no sextants, I'm not adding masters intentionally, nothing too special, and let's see the results. For these, because they are fairly short, I am going to play them in real time. If it is too long for you, I will provide timestamps in the description below where you can skip to the end portion where I kind of tally up what I got from each. So that took around 1 minute and 44 seconds to complete, rounding a little bit, but it should be accurate enough for our purposes here. I had the strict loot filter. Well, how much did I pick up? I picked up about 26 chaos orbs worth of value in the 1 minute and 44 seconds. Keep in mind, this is not going to be accurate map to map. I'd probably have to run 1,000 or at least a couple hundred maps to get an average that is accurate. The important point of comparison here is, of that 26 chaos, 24 chaos orbs were in Seeds and the Lair of the Hydra, all of which I would have picked up regardless of the strictness of my loot filter, which means we're down to about 2.05 chaos orbs in other stuff to debate, which will be important after I run the next map. What is the time here? Well, the time is about 22 seconds faster, which is 20% less time for the run. I got 18.63 chaos, which sounds like a lot less, but again remember, there's a huge amount of variance in map returns, and I'd really like to ignore most of the items that I would be picking up regardless of the strictness of the filter, which means the chaos orb, the seeds, the lair of a hydra, all that stuff from the previous map, let's ignore it along with all of the loot from the uber strict map. What are we left with? Well, what we're left with is about 0.88 chaos in value in 22 seconds. And if we assume that, let's say you still pick up the 6 socket, it's not shown by default, but for most people I think it is correct to enable showing 6 sockets so you can pick them up, then you're making a mere 0.57 chaos for your additional 22 seconds picking up all those other items, which is terrible efficiency. Let's just do some really basic math here by taking the time of each run, the total return of each run, and averaging it out to a profit per unit of time. In this case, let's say per minute. So the first map was roughly 15 chaos orbs per minute of time invested. I'm going to round down. I'm going to round to the nearest 0.1 here. I know I've been doing things to 2 decimal places, but for something like this, I think rounding to 0.1 is fine. So 15 chaos orbs per minute for the first map, and 13.6 chaos orbs for the second map. Again, there's a lot of variance here. The fact that I got a lair of a hydra drop definitely skews things. But even if we take the worst of these two numbers, and we say you are making 13.6 chaos per minute, how much do you add in the 22 seconds it took to pick up all that little stuff? Well, you add 0.57 chaos in nearly half a minute. So if I do out the same math, I take the 0.57 chaos, I divide it by 22 seconds, and I multiply by 60, you are adding 1.6 chaos per minute in value to your map, all the time taken picking up all the small things that show on a less strict filter, which is 11.4% of the efficiency of just using a stricter filter. That is a terrible return on your time investment. This is why you can gain so much more speed by just using a stricter filter and just picking up less items. I'm now going to take this and I'm going to extrapolate it. What if you're doing a high investment map? What if there's a ton of stuff everywhere to pick up? For the high investment map, I'm going to be showing the footage at 2 times speed because obviously it took a lot longer to pick everything up. And I'm going to skip over the general pile of loot because it would take a long time to talk about that, and it's really beside the point here. So instead, I'm going to just talk about the stuff picked up due to having the less strict filter, and comparing that to the total amount of time to get a rough chaos per minute estimate of how much you're really gaining from picking up all that extra stuff and how much time it adds to a more heavily invested map. As I go through these 2 maps, clicking endlessly on alteration shards and orbs of transmutation, please keep in mind that again, there is a large amount of variance in what loot will drop between one map and another, which is why the total loot and the total currency per hour and all that is going to be all over the place. What is much more important is the fact that there is a very clear differential in the time taken to run both maps. Picking up all the currency that showed up on the filter, all the rings and stuff, skipping uniques. I could have picked up uniques as well, but that would have made things even more complicated, and I was trying to keep this simple. You should absolutely look at what uniques have value. If alchemy orbs are worth a lot, what uniques vendor for a lot of alchs, and calculate that into your filter when you are making those manual adjustments, such as whether or not you show 6 sockets. But again, I just wanted to provide a very basic outline of what is a point of comparison, so I decided that picking up currency and jewelry is the best middle ground between just going through and picking up as few things as possible and picking up every single item or trying to simulate chaos recipe or all sorts of other less efficient things that would have taken me a lot of time and not really added that much of value. So, the first map took 9 minutes and 54 seconds, which we're going to round to 10 minutes. The second map took 6 minutes and 22 seconds, which let's just round to 6.5 minutes here. That means that I spent an additional 3.5 minutes picking up items between these 2 maps. Now, the important note here is, what did I gain for that extra 3.5 minutes? So again, I'm going to show the differential loot rather than the complete loot. The problem with the complete loot is it shows things that I would pick up on the uber strict filter from the run with a strict filter. And for example, when I was using the strict filter, a divine orb dropped. And that adds a significant amount of value to the map, which I can't expect every single map. But what I can use as a very accurate point of comparison is if I look at just the additional 3.5 minutes, and if I look at just the things I picked up due to having the strict filter as opposed to the uber strict filter, how much value am I getting? And in my opinion, this is by far the more interesting and more valuable comparison, because let's be honest, if an exalted orb or a divine orb drops, you're going to pick it up regardless of how strict your filter is. I can't think of anyone whose filter is so strict that it's not going to show those things. So it isn't relevant for the purposes of comparing how much value does using a less strict filter add to your map, as opposed to how much time does using a less strict filter add to your map. And again, I would like to point out that the density of content here is much, much higher than the first example. There's a much higher returns, and so it makes sense that it's going to take a lot longer to complete the map. As I was juicing it, as I had Nemesis currency, I wanted to give this the best possible shot of generating a ton of loot. And in fact, I would say it was a success because upon killing the Metamorph, it generated so much loot that on the less strict filter, my game actually lagged out a little bit. So here's the raw differential loot from the strict versus uber strict filters on the juiced map. And as you can see, there's a lot of random stuff and a lot of garbage mixed in there, things that are honestly not worth your time picking up, even if you are using a less strict filter, such as a binding shard, such as an engineer's shard. All those things can very safely be eliminated from the filter entirely. So I'm going to simplify this down to what I think you should pick up even if you are using a less strict filter. And now we get this simplified chart of the chromatic orbs, chance orbs, jeweler's orbs, which are counting the 6 sockets, orbs of transmutation, orb of augmentation, alteration, the total value, and the approximate value per minute. Now, something to keep in mind, yes, I did have to portal out at one point. Yes, that did add extra time to the clock, but I decided to include it because it is not unrealistic that if you're using a less strict filter, you might have to portal out if you're doing super juiced content like this. So in the end, I got 21.69 chaos orbs of additional value in 3.5 minutes, which can be boiled down to around 6.2 chaos orbs per minute, which is vastly higher than using a less strict filter in the previous map. I think that's easily explained though by how dense the content is here, and how much more rewarding the content is due to the Nemesis currency and other factors. In short, juicing your maps is good. You should juice your maps whenever possible. However, it's still only 50% of the efficiency of just running an uninvested Alch and Go map to pick up all that extra stuff, which I would say is very much not worth it. If you're going to be running high investment maps, you need to look at the big picture, the bigger drops, the exalted orbs, the headhunters, all that stuff, and focus on getting as many of those as possible, not picking up a trail of pennies and essentially wasting your time. So I hope you found this comparison helpful. I hope it gives you some ideas of things that you can do to adjust the currencies, uniques, and divination cards that show on your loot filter so that you too can map faster and map more efficiently. There's a huge time differential, and therefore a huge differential in terms of profit per minute or profit per hour from running a stricter loot filter, as opposed to picking up all the little pennies here and there and everywhere. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below as to what things you removed from your loot filters after seeing this video. Do you feel like you're mapping faster? Do you feel like you are mapping more efficiently? If not, what do you think is still holding you back? And what sort of video could I make to potentially address that? Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. And as always, stay safe and stay sane, Exiles.